In this chapter, we will be talking about Australia and its relative location based on where it's at in the Earth. This is chapter 33 in your book, and our essential question is, how does a country's location shape life within its borders? If we look at the geographic setting of Australia, one thing we definitely notice is that it sits apart from the rest of the world. There's a lot of different theories about why Australia is so unique. One of the things that we definitely pay attention to is the idea of the Pangea and continental drift theories. The basic theory goes that at one point all of the countries were together as one supercontinent known as Pangea. As a result of continental drift, they drifted apart from one another, and Australia drifted apart further and further from the other countries, and over the course of 4 million years, in evolution, developed unique characteristics of their animals. For example, the koala bear, the kangaroo, and the bilby. Each one of these is a marsupial, in which means that they have a pouch that they carry their babies. No other continent in the world has marsupials. Geoterms for this chapter, which are on page 479 of your book, is the continental drift theory, endangered species, exotic animals, native species, and threatened species. We just talked about the continental drift theory, so we won't go over that one again. Endangered species are animals or plants that are in danger of dying out in the immediate future. An exotic species is an animal or plant that are brought into an area from somewhere else. The tricky part of exotic species is whether or not you are from the country or not from there. So for example, in America, an exotic species would be a kangaroo. In Australia, the kangaroo would be a native species, an animal or a plant that occur naturally in this area. The last one is a threatened species, which is an animal or a plant that is likely to become endangered if not protected. Australia is known as the land far from Great Britain. Australia was also a colony of Great Britain at one point, and we can see representations of this just in the Australian flag with the Union Jack. This is actually an allusion to the Union Jack, which is Great Britain's flag. 40,000 years ago, Australia was colonized by Aborigines, which is the oldest culture in the world. There are still Aborigines in the outback of Australia today. In 1778, it became a prison colony for Great Britain, where they sent 11 ships and 700 convicts. At the point, Great Britain was going through a time when they didn't have any more jails and didn't know what else to do with their convicts. America had just rebelled, and Georgia was closed off, and that's why they decided to use Australia. By 1851, gold was discovered in Australia, and thousands of treasure hunters flocked to Australia in search of gold. This is what really started the Great Britain colony in Australia. Many of the Aborigines died as a result, but we see many of the influences of the British in Australia. For example, again, the Union Jack, the language, which is English. They still honor the monarch, so they still honor the Queen, and they also have very similar customs and laws as Great Britain, South Africa, and even America. One of the things that is unique about Australia is the reverse seasons. When we talked about in the beginning chapter, we said that seasons are an effect of your location or proximity to the equator. If you are in the northern hemisphere, you will follow seasons that are similar to us. If you are in the southern hemisphere, you will follow opposite seasons. So for example, if we look at our pictures, we see here in December in Australia, Santa Claus is riding a surfboard. That's because December in Australia is their spring. We are in fall. Fall goes all the way through to December 22nd, at which point we start winter. We also see that in June in Australia, people are skiing because they are in the opposite seasons. I want you to remember that it has to do with their proximity to the equator, either being north or south of it. This is also a seasonal advantage for Australia because they are able to export goods to Asia which are not able to grow in the winter. So while it's winter in Asia, China, Japan, Malaysia, and some of these other countries, they're still able to grow the crops and the fruits that these people need and then sell to them. Australia is unique also in its amazing wildlife. All right, we see many unique animals that live in Australia as a result of that continental drift theory. One of my favorite being the Tasmanian devil. And this is where the Looney Tunes got the idea. There's over 1 million plants and animals that are unique to Australia, many of which are endangered. Many of you guys recognize the kangaroo, all right, the duck-billed platypus, and the Tasmanian devil. Again, these animals are all an effect of their location. The final and last thing that we need to talk about with Australia is the fact that at one point they lived under an ozone hole. Technically, the ozone hole was closer towards Antarctica, but they were still affected by it by being so close to it. Now, the ozone hole basically allowed sunlight to go directly into this area, and as a result, we've seen the cancer or the skin cancer rates in Australia extraordinarily high. As a result of this, Australia came up with the Slip, Slap, and Slop campaign. On my website, you can see a video in which it tells the students or the people to slip on a shirt, slop on some sunscreen, and slap on a hat in order to protect themselves from the sun. If you still have any questions about Australia and its unique location, please let me know.